This is the first video in the population section for the Junior Cert, and we're going to look at the demographic transition model, or the population cycle as it can also be called. First of all, so here you are, this is what it looks like. Sometimes usually you'll be given this if you're asked about it in the Junior Cert, the diagram itself here. But there's a couple of things, first of all, before we get into it, just to note of down the bottom here, the birth rate, what a birth rate means, death rate, and natural increase and decrease. Birth rate, you have to know the exact definition. So it's the number of births per thousand of people per year. And it's important to also say the 1,000 people per year at the end, because that's the full definition, which you must write. The death rate is the number of deaths per thousand per year. Natural increase or decrease is if the birth rate is higher than the death rate, then there will be a natural increase. And we'll see that on the next page. But the definition anyway, first of all, to begin with, is the increase or the decrease in the population when birth or death rate difference is established. Okay? But just to go up to the demographic transition model itself, here we can see first of all the stages. There's 5 of them, and you need to know the names of these: high stationary, early expanding, late expanding, low stationary, and declining population. You've got the top line here is the birth rate, there the grey line, the black is death rate, and then when you equate the two of those together, you get the red line. So this is the population itself, the number of people on the planet. Stage 1 then, you need to be able to go through each of them, and explain why the birth rate and death rate are as they are on this, which gives you the population. So here we go, stage 1, high stationary, okay? This is where the birth rate and the death rate are both high. Population is not growing. So you've got that still in the world today, where you'd have isolated tribal groups, for example. High birth rate because of diseases, lack of food, for example, and a high death rate then. So the high birth rate to accommodate, as it were, the high death rate. That's why people would have so many children, because of that, the lack of food, etc. So it's relatively stable, the population. It sort of works itself out. And the reasons for changes in the birth rate: many children are needed for farming because of the lack of food, for example, and they might die at an early age, or religious or social encouragement in that region might encourage, for example, a lack of contraception. And there'll be no family planning. And then the reasons for the change in the death rate are, as we said, the disease, famine, poor medical knowledge. So many children are dying because of this. So that's in your high stationary, okay, stage 1. Stage 2 is where the death rate, you can see, drops off significantly. And that's what's important in the second stage here. Okay, as a consequence, the population will quickly start to expand. Okay, your early expanding stage there, as it says. So this is where you have improvements in medical care, for example, coming into countries, or water supply and sanitation. Fewer children are dying, basically. And that's in places like, as it says, Egypt, Kenya, India are examples that you have there. So there's a rapid drop in the death rate, and the birth rate stays the same. So there's a very rapid increase, natural increase there. Okay, same reasons that they're having so many children. Okay, in those countries there will be still religious or social encouragement, as it says, and this countries, as you can see, the ones that are given will be generally, I suppose, considered underdeveloped countries. Their economies wouldn't be very strong, so you had a lot of activity in primary economic activities, farming, and farming, not so much fishing maybe, or forestry, but predominantly farming in these countries. So you'd have lots of children to work the farm. The next one then is stage 3, the late expanding. This is where the birth rate is beginning to drop, okay, to come back in line with the death rate. So you still have an increase. You can see the natural increase, the green section here, but the red line is going to start leveling out, and level out more obviously in stage 4, but you still have an expanding population. So Brazil, which is slightly more, the economy is more prosperous than the African countries that we've given here, and then India as well. The birth rate is falling, and the death rate is still falling because of the improved medical care and the diet, and there is a slower increase in the population. And there's improvement in medical care again, water supply and sanitation. So stage 2 and 3 here, these improvements in medical care, etc. This is really to do with the economy beginning to improve though. As you can see, when you move into stage 4 and 5 here, this is your developed countries, your Western European countries, North American countries, and Australia's and countries like that, Japan, etc., where you have a very good healthcare system, reliable food supply. And now you can see the examples there. Okay, so the population is beginning to level off. Low birth rate and death rate as well because of the family planning, good health, improved status of women. These topics are mentioned in the second PowerPoint. The factors which affect population growth, and that's a very important video to look at as it applies to this also. But if you look at stage 5 here, this is an important stage because you actually see the population beginning to decline. And there's a natural decrease, and that's the first time that this is identified on this demographic transition model. And the main reason, well, Germany is an example of a country where this is taking place, and this is really to do with families having less than 2.1 children on average, which is the replacement rate, is what that's called. So in other words, if the two parents die, you would need 2.1 children or more on average per family for the population to maintain its numbers. So that's the replacement rate of the population. So if it's less than 2.1, if, in other words, parents are having one child families, that's going to mean that there's going to be a natural decrease in the population as you move through the generations. And we'll look at that also in a moment on the next page. But they're the 5 stages: high stationary, early expanding, late expanding, low stationary and declining. And the main reasons down the bottom here for 2 and 3 are the economy is beginning to develop, and stage 4 and 5 is the economy has developed. When talking about natural increase or decrease, we're talking about the birth rate and the death rate and working the two of them out against each other. So here you can see the birth rate where there's a natural increase, the population is going up. We're going to say that there's 50 people per 1,000 per year being born in that country, just for the moment. And then the death rate is 20 per 1,000 per year. So the growth is 30 people. Okay, that should be straightforward enough. You just subtract the 20 from the 50. So it's 30 people per 1,000 per year. So you work that out as 30 people over the 1,000, which actually adds to a 3% natural increase in the population. Okay, so the actual number that is added to the population is 30, and you divide that then by the 1,000 to get it as a percentage of the percentage of natural increase. Here you've got the opposite, natural decrease in population. There's 30 people being born per year, whereas there's 40. There's more people dying than there is being born. So you'd know there that the actual number itself is a -10 addition to the population. Okay? And that means that there's a 1% natural decrease in the population. They're just terms. It's unlikely that this would be asked for you to work this out, but it's there for you to be familiar with and just be familiar with the terms themselves as well. So that's the demographic transition model and how to explain the 5 different stages which you may be asked to do and to be able to name each stage also.